So I find myself properly situated, making the seventh episode in what is going to be season one of the podcast of the Sonic. And I'm wearing all gray because it is gray outside. And I feel happy. And I feel happy because it's a choice. But more than it being a choice, I felt that I can be anything in the world and I'd rather be happy. Great. So we'll round off the first couple episodes by hashing out topics, drama, topics like drama, external gratification, eating too much, fasting, fear, doubt, parental approval, designer value, money, sobriety, weed, BDNF, meat, and being vegan. Okay. So, through this journey of essentially allowing myself to choose happiness as the end rather than something that is there because of a means that I essentially took advantage of. The whole drama thing, I don't focus on, I don't deal with. And the reason that is like that, and the reason why external gratification is kind of a pseudo form of happiness, is because the essence of like getting yourself to choose happiness is an inside job. It's not necessarily something that having something or being somewhere can really provide. It's you receiving it because you are it. You're being that. You're a human being, right? So when I come across folks who regularly have drama in their lives, they're also the same kind of people who are feeling gratification with the external world more than they are with the internal world. And so, just speaking on my experience, I got to a point in my life where I went to the doctor's office, and we could say whatever we want about the doctor's office, but I was essentially, I had an extra 60 pounds on my body than what I have today. And I was thinking about, I was scrolling through Pinterest, and it was so fascinating for me to see that a lot of people kind of have this idea of what they consider to be normal or what they consider to be, you know, something that they want. And for the longest time, I looked at the same thing that they were looking at, and I was like, well, I don't know if that really applies to me. I mean, I could talk about, like, just right now, I made the realization that whoever is meant to fall in love with me falls in love with me because of who I am inside. And the external physical body that I have, this avatar, is just a reflection of that. And when I fall in love with her, it'll be because what she chooses to have inside of her, that joy and that ease of mind and that freedom to be herself, is reflected on the outside. And it really hit home because I don't have to worry about being someone that fits in or is considered normal, because that's external gratification that I don't have to worry about. That's just more drama I'm adding into my life. And so, how this relates to food is because through my own adventure in becoming this version of myself, I realized that when I was the closest version to normal that other people would accept, I was also someone who was in the position to eat away. And like, this is a very real thing. When people eat away their problems, or they stuff themselves to the point where their mind can only focus on eating food, can only focus on digesting the food, versus the mind having the ability to derive information or learn new things, or having the body be in the state of repair mode. And I'm going to touch on this soon in this episode, actually, because the next topic was fasting. And so the segue there is, that is the reason why I now sit here and I'm like, okay, out of all the things I can do, eat meat or choose to externally gratify myself, I'd rather choose to be happy and then go do things from there. And the things that I do while being happy include things like fasting, and things like learning, and things like repairing my body. And it wasn't always like that, because growing up I listened to what modern conventional ways of thought were telling me, in terms of, oh, you should go have this or try that, or this is going to be what helps you. And after having had listened to other people, I then started to listen to myself, and I realized that the more I began listening to myself, the less things I started to fear, and the less doubt I had in my mind, and there was no need for parental approval anymore. And it was just this entire essential ego death, if some might want to call it that, where being 21 at the time, it was like, okay, here's an example. It's like, how do I get myself to be happy? And what I realized was that in this movie called Tenet, they perform a temporal pincer maneuver. And what I realized was that going back in time was actually helping me become the best version of myself for the future. But it wasn't me going back in time as a means to an end to like solve my problems, but instead to ask questions, so that when the future happened, as I progressed forward, I could see what it was worth me doing or what was not worth me doing. And so what any of that means is that I I learned values, and I learned what was worthy of me taking forward. A good quote that I live by is, come alone to come along. You will only find what you bring with you. And it's so true, because when Yoda was training Luke, and Luke saw the essentially what was his mind and his fears and his doubts, and he was walking into the cave to go essentially see what Vader wanted, he realized like this projection of fear isn't real, but beyond it not being real, it's something that he put there himself. And it related a lot to me in my life, because I knew that for me to get to this point, the work I had to do was actually going backwards in time and realizing like, oh, I did this because of that. And I keep feeling that feeling because I keep reacting in this sort of a way, or this growth can be had if I do X, Y, and Z thing. And ultimately, it's got me to the point where it's like, okay, to give you a more straightforward, basic kind of example, it's like with money. With money, you have the opportunity to take something that you have an excess of, something you have an abundance of, and then you give it to other people, just in the same way that someone gave it to you. And so what I learned was like, if cotton, for example, right? If you go to the fanciest, most expensive, most exclusive stores in the world, they don't have any plastic anywhere in any of their wardrobes, their accessories. It's all real things like metals, like gold, real things like linens, real things like cotton. And what I realized was that I can take that same psychological analyzation process and I can apply that to things like my incense, the soap I use on my body. And so it started to all make sense to me because even to this day, I probably wear out of my entire wardrobe, there's probably like 3 or 4 total labels on all the clothes I own. And the reason that that works is because, well, let's just say you're the designer for quite literally any brand. Are you going to wear anyone else's brand? And so when I realized that, it was like, okay, if I'm starting to understand the value of what I am as a person and the value of what money is, then ultimately money finds me because I find value in myself. And so the real intention of this video really is for me to audibly express the fact that I'm doing this for the pure face value of the fact that I feel good. And I'm bringing that energy into this video expression format. And the reason I'm doing that is because it feels good hearing out loud the fact that there are alternate versions of thinking, alternate versions of understanding how to use money, alternate versions of learning what to do in certain situations. And so being able to offer that to, we'll just put it simply, myself is amazing because in a sense, when I was looking to feel good in my life, I had to go and ask so many questions and provide myself with chances of opportunity that led me to who I am today, especially with sobriety. So this is what, 2 week, no, the second month. And the dreams I have and the way of life that I have is a night and day difference. And the reason why this is relevant, this is important, is because when you understand what money can offer other people, what you can understand where the value can offer other people is actually just a reflection of yourself. And so what I realized was like, probably at the age of 21, is if I stop drinking, that means I have more money. Just flat out, period. And then it allowed me to feel this sense of gratitude knowing that I wasn't going to use the money in a consumerism type of way. Just in the same way that I wasn't going to go and buy this, different items of clothing that were objectively more expensive than the clothes I have now, because it's going to do the same thing, but in a certain practical sense. Like, you have to see where the value is and why something is priced at a certain point, because ultimately, if you could make it yourself, you wouldn't be paying for anything. But then, in the respect of saying, like, okay, if I can do my best to remove myself from the capitalistic consumerism that is planned obsolescence, then the perpetual redundancy of buying clothes or interacting with items that are in the physical world that promote the forever nature of life, then I gotta feel that. And the reason I can feel that is because I resonate with it, because that's what's happening within my body. The rejuvenation of my skin, my blood, my hair, everything in between. So this ultimately gets us to my research into cannabis. And where I've gone with this is that I still don't know, because I know that there are versions that are out there that supersede and are outside of what I've tried and are, in their most basic sense, different in the ways that they don't involve additives or modifications, and that the process in itself reveals a completely different experience. But ultimately, what I have noticed is that the dreams and the way that I can cognitively function, although it is reflective, the sober sense has allowed me to be in a state where I don't have to have. In the previous video, I mentioned antiperspirant, aluminum based deodorant. Like, I don't have to have that anymore, because the musk that I have as a man, it's like, you know what, at the end of the day, I have to accept that there's a girl out there that thinks the same way in this one sense. And she's gonna have a musk to her. And I'm gonna fall in love with that musk in the same way that a monkey or a bonobo would fall in love with their mate, would be through the smell and how the different chemical balances within her interact with me. And so I say that in the sense that, like, physically speaking, we're essentially just wild animals that put clothes on and have the intelligence to communicate like this. But that's also to say that there's other animals and such that can communicate and have that version of intelligence, and they too are, they maybe they do dances, or they have certain color schemes on their body that allow them to find mates, or maybe they go and they fight to the death, and that's how they can have their mate. But ultimately what this also means is, like, for example, I've been talking for about 17 minutes and 48 seconds. So there's this thing that you should go research. It's called BDNF, the brain derived neurotrophic factor. Basically, what it means is, like, that's the stuff that allows you to be cognitive in life. And that stuff, whether you're fasted or whether you're no meat at all, no dairy, no animal product at all, it has an influence. So in my retrospective life, um, let's just say it was 10% there as like a full carnivore omnivore. And then when I went vegetarian, it went up to like 35%. And then the second that I dropped the animal products altogether, it's as high as it's ever been. To put a number on it at this point is like a subjective thing, because what I now understand is that this is a way of life that allows me to have the best version of myself be felt. And it feels good being this way. It's not that I'm using this lifestyle as a means to feel good. It's that I feel good now, and I resonate with the aspects of the choices that I make, because those choices revealed themselves to me as I started to feel better about myself, point blank, period. And then those streams of consciousness and those thoughts and those decisions and those choices and those opportunities then started to flood into me. And I started to grab onto them like I'm on a ladder. And the higher that I went, the more and more I started interacting with that same perpetual, redundant, good feeling, creative process energy. So this brain derived neurotropic factor stuff enhances that. It's literally the source, quite literally feeding you and giving you that essence of life. And so I'll touch on veganism real quickly because I'm not vegan particularly. I remember telling somebody like, "Hey, I bought these shoes. I'm also a vegan," but the shoes within themselves were not vegan. And so what I ultimately realized is like, wow, this whole vegan thing is like no different than a political ideology or religion or anything of the sort. And I don't really conform or resonate with most of that stuff. So I just found it a little bit interesting how there's people who essentially they're like, oh, I don't want to eat certain products, but then I want to go and have the meal replacement as if I was eating that same product. And it's like, well, that's it's a little interesting to me. And so like my if I could put it simply, it's just like as close to a raw diet as possible. Because I mean, I guess at some point I'm still open to the opportunity of just a completely raw frugivore lifestyle. But then in the respect of like there's some things that can be processed, like a smoothie where the fruits are frozen, or a pizza where you just have like that little bit of a crunch, a little bit of a bite. And I know that you can outsource that to like an apple or a watermelon, but it's a tomato, and ultimately it's a flour. It's flour, and then the whole thing about sourdough and honey, and it's like ultimately there's so many benefits, and that's like the other part of it is like bees are making the honey. It's not like they're taking it from a flower. It's not like I'm eating the bee, but then it's also like milk in itself is coming directly from the animal, and then an egg is a potential animal. So it's like this whole thing because then right, but where I'm at with it is the basic version of life is if you look in the Bible, it says the fruit of this earth. I'm still open to just only having the fruit because having had the fruit, having have lived that lifestyle, and knowing that every day I get up and I feel good, those rooms and those environments, I feel that often. That good feeling thought energy often. So why would I want to sacrifice it? And that's really the kind of like the purpose of where we're going with this is like I sit here and the the intention of this expression is already been said. And the purpose for me is at least oh the purpose for me is that I feel good. And what I mean by this is like if you want to do this exercise with me is just imagine the best version of yourself, right? What do they have and what do they do? What decisions got them to get to that point? And of course, the more you learn, the more that needle is going to move on that compass. So stay open to that. It's part of being someone who's human with humility. It's also part of disciplining yourself because you got to keep refining until you can get to point your compass in a direction that's somewhere you're supposed to go. And what I learned was, at least in my sense, that I can feel those feelings now. Those same feelings I could, because the reality is like, let me just give you the objective, super simple example, right? The the ability to like have a car and have a home and have all the money necessary to pay for anything including taxes, right? But then to also have enough money to basically say, you know what, I have enough time to use this money and travel and maybe get a camera, buy a notebook, get a backpack, some fun shoes, and do all these kinds of things, and then not blink twice about the fact that you still are generating more than what you're gonna use or spend. And so those feelings are objective, because those that feeling of happiness of being at that concert is actually found in the same feeling that you had sitting in your car singing to that song, which you do every day. And the concert happened once, but that song you can listen to forever, which is like the same gracious feeling of harmony that you would have of being like, oh, I have the peace of mind knowing, yeah, I have the facilities available to manage all of these what are essentially material goods, this roof over my head and my own personal health and things like that. Having that security, having that ease of mind, that freedom to have these things, you can feel that now. It's just that the state of wanting something is not the same state as physically having it, or in your mind choosing the thought processes that are reflective of having it. And so what that means is, like, for example, being unconditional with love, and this is straight from Brian Withers on YouTube, is that the ability for me to be as happy as I can be right here, right now, is a choice that I make, and then from that choice I go and I move around and create with that choice. It's not that I'm gonna go and work 75 hours a week getting myself to find the money or the people necessary to make my life happen. I don't know. Having had tried that and having had done that, and then having had read what other people feel and done doing that life, I realized, like, wait, I'm already everything in, like, the woo woo objective kind of way of thinking about it, where the physical body, like getting up and having the ability to turn on the computer and then turn on the monitor and then look out and be like, the world, right? Like, that is this flesh avatar is literally the wealth. That's the wealthiest thing, because this is your PO box where everything is going to come and meet you, all these good feelings. Because that's the other thing, is like, and this is the main thing I want to harp on, the reason why you could do that and assume everything is already yours is because the rich thought that you have, and this will be one of the richest thoughts you've ever heard, and then once you start thinking about it, it'll change your life. The second you can wholeheartedly sit, like in a bed, like how I am, sit there and say to yourself, you know what, I actually have it. These thought processes that you can sit there and be like, oh yeah, I actually am happy. Because having had suffered so much in my own mind, and I realized, like, wow, you mean to tell me that the body is the wealthiest thing that I've ever had, and then the thoughts are the same today as they are going to be in that dream house of mine, in in that dream car, driving that dream car of mine, in that dream destination that I saw on Pinterest, and I was able to be like, I want to go there. Because the reality is, and this is the thought, is the one commonality between you and that future version of yourself, or you and that ideal version of yourself, or you and that the dream that you're having, is that you are the one there. So the max feeling of being happy, you might as well have it now, because that's that same feeling you're gonna have there. It's not like it's gonna alter or change. Like, of course, you might smell flowers and roads and air that you've never smelled before, but the reality is, the one commonality that is here, is over there, because it's me. It's this spark of light, this literal PO box, if you would. Like, it's gonna receive mail all the time. And I know that it's like, you might be listening to this and be like, how, or how long does it take, or any of these things. I would say realistically, if you really, really cared about it, it could be an overnight thing. But for it to be an overnight thing, and I heard this be said once, was that you're an overnight success because it took you 10 years of work to do something. But that kind of contradicts what I was just saying, because the reality is you could literally pick up and choose whatever you want whenever you feel like it, and it doesn't have to take you that long. I'll just show you my experience. Is that this is we're in 2025 now, so this would be really the second year, like the start of, like, really year two and a half. So that's like 12. That's 24 minus 6 would be like, we're on like the 18th month of, like, actually putting in work based off of another 6+ years of being like, do I want any of this in my life for the future? And then renegotiating things like my personal choices, realizing that I'm not a victim, realizing that I put myself in every situation, taking accountability, being honest with myself, having a sense of humility. And a lot of people might have those things developed already. And that's kind of the point where it can be, I'm not saying that it has to be expedited, but what I am saying is that you have to take action based off of your intent and the purpose of your action. You're going to experience a quality of life that's proportionate or relevant to that said action. Ultimately, the time is irrelevant from the fact that it is worth it. And that the feelings that you have and the clarity of mind you have, those are the rich thoughts. And they add to your body, which is your wealth, which is everything. And so that's what I realized. And that's the biggest thing I learned, was that by cutting out all the junk food, all the processed food, the bad oils, and the swearing and all that, that was an internal choice. And I saw it be reflected by my skin clearing up, by me beginning a healthier life, me having less on my mind, because I earned the ability to derive the lessons, because I learned what they meant to me. So yeah, this is I'll just put here, end of season 1. If there's one thing you could take away from this, one thing right now that you could take away from this, is that the same person who's listening to this right now is the same person that's going to have everything you've ever desired and more. So you might as well as have that good feeling, thought, energy in the creative process right now. Because again, that same feeling of ecstasy that you feel in your car listening to that song, or taking that photo today, or giving yourself another chance today, is the same feeling. Maybe to like a different magnitude. Because again, like the sun might be out right now, that it's overcast skies, right? But the commonality is that it's gonna be you. It's gonna be the same person. I mean, you might be living a different life and all that good jazz, which is kind of the point, but you get to basically take, from right now at least, you get to take that feeling with you the whole way. Because why would you want to feel insecure or have any kind of a doubt or live in despair because you're going to leave someone behind or because you're going to do something that someone doesn't want you to do? Would that dream version of you have any of those thoughts or live like that or consider holding themselves back? No, they would want you to have courage and be ambitious, but ultimately they want you to be happy and have the ease of mind knowing that every day is a good day. Every day that you can turn the computer on and turn the display on, it's a good day. Every day is a good day. So this is the man who thinks. You can call me August, the eternal optimist. And for those that care, it's a Leo sun, Taurus moon, Aries rising. So take care. All the best.